Hey everyone, welcome to Intro to SAS. So let's start with, let's talk a little bit about what SAS is. SAS is what we would call a superset of CSS. So if CSS is all of this, SCSS is all of that and some more. So if you have SAS set up correctly and you just change your CSS extensions from CSS to SCSS, everything just works. But we get a couple extra things with SAS, some things that you may have sorely missed, such as variables. We technically have variables in CSS now, but they're not nearly as nice to use as the SAS ones. We get functions. We get nesting, so you can put one selector inside of another. We get mix-ins, which are like, I want to have some chunk of CSS that I get to reuse in a bunch of places to mix in. And much, much, much more. So it's just supercharging your CSS. Another thing that you should know right off the bat is you hear SAS and SCSS used interchangeably. They're technically two different things, or more specifically, SAS refers to both SAS and SCSS. SCSS is superset of CSS, uses the exact same syntax that you come to know and love. SAS is all of these new things, but it's also a totally different syntax. It is all indentation based. There's no curly braces. And so if you wanted these features in CSS and you hated the CSS syntax for whatever reason, boy, do they have you covered. I literally don't know anybody who uses it. I think SCSS is like for sure the right choice. Now, your next question is probably, how on earth could I use such a thing? It's not just a matter of changing the extension. You have to have something that is looking for that file, and every time that you have like a SAS file, it gobbles it up and poops out a CSS file. Because your browser still only understands HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's it. Your browser doesn't understand SAS, it doesn't understand TypeScript, it doesn't understand any of these cool superchargy tools. So what we do is we have a tool that takes our SCSS files and compiles them, or more specifically, transpiles them into something the browser can understand. So you have an app.scss, and you have something that chomps that up and turns it into app.css. So this is the thing you write, this is the thing you get. Questions about this?
CSS, SCSS, and one app.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What's the question?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you use both CSS and SCSS?
Yep.
Like in one app?
Totally. It's a real, like, not complicated well, how SAS does this is magic, but turning this file into this file is it looks for files that have this extension and turns them into this. And that's kind of it. Other questions about high level, what SAS is all about?
What would the syntax for the functions look like? Is it more like JavaScript?
It looks a lot like JavaScript, yeah. So let's take a look at them. Oh, sorry, one of my children was making a sound. Parents can sympathize on this. It's either like laughing so hard you can't handle it or crying, but they sound identical. Yeah, okay, those are the built-in ones. There we go. They look like this. See, we can get for loops and stuff.
Would the for loops be kind of like a CSS animation?
It's usually more for like something mathy like this. That'd be a more appropriate use for it. There's no like built-in way to do exponents in CSS or SAS, but you could define something like this that would allow you to multiply a pixel by some value. Or this is a pretty good one too. It's just mashing up some other built-in SAS functions. So yeah, no way in CSS to just get the inverse of a color. You can write a function that would do that though. Cool. Other questions? High level, what SAS is all about. Cool, let's get our hands dirty. So there's a few different ways you can make this process happen. I think the easiest one for us is probably going to be Node SAS. It's not an especially fast or efficient way to do it, but it sure is easy, and that's what we care about right now. So pull up Node SAS. That's it. Cool. And then that gets it there. But I swear that's for the JavaScript one. Maybe it's this one. Shit, hang on. I thought that would give me the command line tool, and I don't think it actually does. Let me see if this has a CLI real quick. There we go. That's it. I thought so. Okay, so let's go to a new file on your computer. A new folder, I mean. So I'm going to call mine SAS practice. Okay, so nothing in this folder, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. We're going to make a new node project with npm init-y. Cool thing to note about this, this doesn't have to be a Node backend or anything like that to use Node stuff, especially something like this where all we really want out of it is the SASS CLI. You could use this on an otherwise vanilla project. It's really just a way to get access to these tools. And if you haven't looked into any of the Node stuff, a Node package or an NPM package is a gem. That's an identical concept. And like, if I do npm install node-sass like that, you'll notice it even makes like a lock file and shit exactly like the gem file was in Ruby. All right, so I want you to do this, npm install node-sass. Give it a go.
Hey, Kyle, what does the flag Y stand for?
Yes. If you run npm init without the Y, it just asks you questions about what you want all those things to be.
Okay.
If you do -Y, it just farts all the way through that. Cool. So we got that. Now we're going to make just touch app.scss. That's it. So your folder should look like this now. npm init made this package JSON file. When we installed node-sass, it threw it in that folder and gave us this lock file. And then we just made an empty app.css file. If we go over to these docs, this gives us an idea of how this can be used. So it's node-sass input, and then we can say where we want it to redirect to. All right, we can just do npx node-sass app.scss. And if I do that and look in the folder, it didn't do it. Because it does want you to be explicit about the output. Cool. Then app.css. Cool, done. And it turned that into app.css. Get this far. You can do it with an empty file. It gets a lot easier to do it with a full file.
That command is not working for me with the same configuration. Unless I'm missing something.
Okay, so
It's not working.
we installed node-sass. We ran npx node-sass. We have to point it, like this file has to be there.
Oh. It was just because I didn't, yeah, the app, that SCSS file I did not have created. I did not see that part. My bad.
There we go. Cool. Give me some kind of visual indication that like this is working, you're following along. Give me thumbs up. I'm seeing some thumbs. I'm seeing some thumbs. Lots of thumbs. Lots of thumbs. Thank you. So next step, I want you to make a new terminal. And this terminal is going to run this as a watch so that every time we make a change to that file, it re-CSSs it. So I'm going to tmux. I'll make one of these for CSS. And I'm going to make one of these for my regular editor. And I'll make one of these that's like my server. So I'll run light server on. So over for this SCSS, I'm going to do npx, that same command that I ran a second ago, But one change. I'm going to run this watch command, this watch option also. So that goes right after the node sass command, but before the input and the output. It would look like that. And then we're just going to leave that alone. So supposedly, every time we change our app.scss, it should rerun that. See if it does. So if I make this, I put some style rule in here and save. Hey, look, it changed it. And if I look over at my CSS file, hey, look, it compiled it for me. It even saved me a line by making it all ugly. If I change something over here and make this border 1 pixel solid black, runs it again. That's how you do this. And if I look at that CSS file, hey, copied my changes over. And it'll also do it if I do something that I can only do in Sass, like $, color red, and then make that color. So look at the CSS file. Check it out. I could even do something like nest these things. And it'll figure out the syntax for me. Pretty cool. All right, so get this far. You should have a watcher running. And try writing some rules. Take a look at that CSS file, see what it does.
Can I look at the watcher real quick?
Yep. This was the command.
Kyle, I typed in that command, but it's just like stalling out, like it hasn't done anything.
Oh yeah, it's long-lived. So I don't have control of my terminal over here anymore. As soon as you make a change to that file, check this out. So when I run that command, oh no, it looks like my computer stalled out.
Gotcha.
Until I change something on here, because it is watching for changes so that I can write the file.
So when you implement this with your link, you'll be linking to the app.css, not the SCSS, right?
You're beautiful. Yeah, because my HTML doesn't know what to do with an SCSS file, but it's making new versions of this app.css all the time.
Can you go
So is
back?
Is that Kelsey talking?
Shelly, I said, can you go back to your SCSS file real quick?
Yep. Cool. As a convenience, I certainly don't remember the syntax for that off the top of my head. I don't imagine you will either. So here's the thing that we can do to make this even better. You go to your package.json file. We're going to change this test script. Fuck it. We'll just add to it. So we're going to add a comma at the end. And we're going to do something called build styles. And it's just going to be that node sass command without the npx. Node sass -w app.scss app.css. Note, you cannot put a comma at the end. You can in JavaScript. This is not JavaScript, JSON. Slightly different rules. Also, have to use double quotes. Single quotes are not allowed in JSON. So if I do that, then I can just say npm run build styles, and it does the same thing. And I can make that anything I want. Way easier to remember. And way easier when I send this over to you, you don't also have to know how node sass works. You just need to run my command.
Hey, how did you stop the first one from running?
Control C. Good question.
So will you only have one SAS file to every CSS file?
You don't have to, but let me show you an example of like how you can get around the thing that you're thinking of. So if I have, you don't have to follow along with this, some other SAS file.scss. Then over in my app one, ta-da. And now I could do some other thing over here. And if I look at the resulting CSS, oops, did not do it. Might have gotten the import syntax wrong. Anyway. SAS.
Can you also link SAS files together?
That's what import is.
Okay, so you're connecting the SAS files, not the
Yes,
the SAS
exactly.
file to the CSS file.
Correct.
Okay, so you could have like one SAS that's basically like, you know, all the colors saved to variables that you like, and then the other SAS file you could actually go ahead and use all them. And...
Oh, weird. It's almost like that's exactly what I do all the time, baby. So like,
That sounds lovely.
Develop Denver, for example. Look at that. I got my colors. I have my scales. I have all my typography. Magical. Or like on my personal site, do the same thing. Look at all those. All the colors in one place. I can have different ones for different pages in one place. All my scale stuff. And then all of it is just imported here. And so that app.scss, that's the only one that actually gets imported.
So you're only running one CSS file? Or did I see that wrong?
Yep, that is exactly, and that's what you want to do. If you have a bunch of CSS files, those are all things that need to get downloaded every time somebody goes to your page. So you want to concatenate. You don't want to write it that way. That's exhausting. You want to write it all split up in tiny modular things. That's a terrible way to send something over a network, though. So building a site is about jamming all those files together.
So you just want to name things strategically and stuff so that you ideally only ever have one CSS file.
Correct.
Wow, did I jack that up in my project? One for every damn page.
So there's good reasons why you might want to have multiple ones. Like if that one CSS file is then 3 megabytes or something like that, and somebody just goes to one page on your app and they have to download the entire thing, that sucks. But there's a very way outside of the scope of this program called technique called code splitting that addresses that. Oh, one other note though with like combining SAS files like that though, I just did that as some other SAS file. If you want to hint to SAS that it's not supposed to try to compile that one. It's only supposed to do it because it's imported in something else. And so the trick is to put an underscore in front of that. Like so. Nice. Some other SAS file has something in it. And yeah.
Can you say that again regarding the underscore?
If you only you put underscores in front of every SAS file that isn't being compiled directly. So I'm only running that SAS compile command against app.scss, but that one imports other files. You don't actually have to put the underscore there, but you do put it in the file name.
Oh, so that stops it from creating a some other SAS file.css.
Correct. But it still puts it in the built thing.
Oh, so it'll always automatically create that CSS file from a SAS file otherwise?
Correct. Yes.
Kyle, what did you run in the terminal to once you put it in the script?
So after I put it in the script, the command is npm run, and then just whatever you labeled it as. And that'll work with anything. Check this out. If there's just some other kind of cool command that like is hard to type out or something like that, you can write any shell command in there. So you could say something like ls. And then if I do npm run list, it runs ls. Super like convenient way if you have like long, especially if they have a lot of arguments and options and that kind of stuff, you can throw it in a little script like this. And now not only do you not have to remember it, but anybody else who's working with your project has access to that too. Questions so far?
So with the import stuff, you were saying that you only really need to watch one file and then you can import the other files from that file.
Yeah.
And is that similar with other things that are maybe not SAS? For example, while I was working with Browserify, is it similar with that where you could run like, could you do import all the other files into one file and only watch one file?
Browserify works the exact same way.
Awesome. Also, I don't know if you know, but there's something going on with your audio where we're getting a crazy echo for everybody.
All right. I don't know what I can do about that. Cool. So other questions about what we're doing? All right. So let's, now that we have all this stuff set up, let's do some stuff with it. So don't follow along with this. I will give you the code. I'm going to make an HTML file that I can link to this on. So make that file in there. Cool. It's a fine enough place to start. All right. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to throw this in the Slack thread where I put the Zoom link for this. Copy it down if you'd like. Ah, come on, man. All right, posted. Put that in an index.html file. I'll give you a sec to do it.
I'm assuming your lists are supposed to close.
Oh, yes. Please close the list items, otherwise that's going to fall apart real fast. All right. So let's see if it works. I light server that up. Hey, that came from my SAS style sheet. All right, so let's do some real SAS. Oh, no. Oh, I'm not running my runner anymore. npm run build styles. All right. Back in business. So the highest priority things that I think you should know in SAS are variables, nesting, and mix-ins. The variables, pretty easy. You start something with a $sign, and that's your variable name. So I could have something like padding is 24 pixels, let's say. It can be any like valid CSS thing. It could even be another SAS variable. So that could be pixels, it could be a color, it could be part of an argument for something. All that stuff is a valid SAS variable. Then I could say something like li's padding is padding. And all of a sudden they get that padding. Why don't you give that a shot? Cool. So that's variables. Not a whole lot else to it. Let's say we wanted to nest this. So I don't want to target every single LI. I only want to target LIs that are inside of navs. So I can do that like that. And also put them inside each other. And if we take a look at like how this compiles, that's exactly what it ends up being. It's just that. But this is really handy for being able to visualize that, especially if we have like a bunch of these things inside navs that we're trying to style. So what that ends up looking like on some of my stuff. Okay, so this is a page on my site. I can nest these things so they like roughly match the hierarchy of the page. And I think it makes it so much easier to find stuff. Cool. Then last thing I want to show you is mix-ins. So mix-ins are super powerful. This is for if we have something that we want to reuse in a bunch of places. So it's not a value like padding is. You can think of it as like a group of styles that we want to be able to reuse. So we do @mixin. We give it some kind of name like list item. And we can just put collections of things in there. And then to use it, the phrase that pays is include. I might be mad that that came after. Yeah, it is. That needs to be like chronologically before, but there we go. There's the smallest example I can think of some of the most useful SAS features.
So could you use the
Questions?
mix-in?
Is that?
Can you use like the mix-in to make like a palette setup?
Yep. Absolutely could. They take arguments also. So check this out. Let's say I make a primary and a secondary color thing. This can take an argument just like a function does. And I can just pass one in. Okay, that works. And secondary, how about? And so does that. Pretty cool. SCSS fixes every single gripe that I have with SAS, other than nested grids.
I'm kind of interested in the how you set up those, I guess, your standards for colors and type fonts and stuff like that.
I did a video Uh, that was how I did that for the Firebase site. That might be informative. So if you look up Hike, Hayk, I live coded this whole site. So let me see if I can find that one. All right, wasn't on that one. This one looks right. Perfect. Yeah, live coding hike number 2. Check this out. This is me making the color swatches for that site. And this is the exact process that I use to make that color palette. I picked it up from a book called Refactoring UI that is mwah. But that is the step-by-step process that I use for making that color palette.
By Adam Wathan?
Yep, that's the book. And then the scales that I use for that, I also picked those up from that book. I use them basically unmodified. They are in my knowledge wiki under design, I think. Yeah. Factoring UI. And there's the scale. I use that on everything. And this is the text scale. I use those 2 things on basically everything. But then the methodology that I use for colors, I do that custom for everything, but I picked that up out of that book also. Other questions about SAS?
Hey Kyle, can you use this with React and Vue?
Yeah, and Vue is
cautious?
actually dirt fucking easy to use. You don't even need to go through the whole Node SAS thing. Check this out. The way that this works in Vue is find some Vue component and put lang equals SCSS. Done. And then you can just write all the SAS you want in there. That's SAS, that's SAS. Beautiful. And then I think a similar thing in React. I'm pretty sure in React, you just import an SCSS file and Webpack handles it for you.
Cool.
You had an argument to the mixin. Is that the same thing as a SAS function, or is that a whole different thing?
That's a whole different thing. So what a SAS function does, SAS function has a return value. This doesn't return anything. It just poops out these properties like I copy pasted them in place of this. Which is why functions are better for math kind of stuff. Like if instead of 700, I wanted something that's like half, then I could make a function called half that would be something like that.
Okay, so their use is pretty limited to numbers. Is that what you're kind of suggesting?
No, you could also do it with colors. You can do it with whatever, but you're not getting properties out of it. You're doing it's pure functions, data transformation.
Gotcha.
I don't remember where the actual page went. I lost it. Other questions about SAS?
Was Bootstrap something like an alternative to using SCSS?
No, that's like a thing on top. Bootstrap's actually made with SCSS. So Bootstrap is a totally different approach to this. So SCSS is supercharged CSS, just gives you more and fancier ways to handle that. Bootstrap is a styling framework that works like this. So instead of like spending all this time fucking around with the SCSS, I do things like class, medium, 3-column, whatever, and then I wrap it in a row. And oops. And then I take the thing that I wrapped in a row and I say that this is supposed to span 9 calls. Like it's, so you're using these class names and it gets you tied into like a pre-made styling framework. You can use SCSS to customize the framework. But the thing that like people like about Bootstrap is you just slap these classes on things and you get something that looks reasonably okay. What I hate about it is that in the process, you end up completely destroying the semantics of your HTML, which like is non-negotiable for me. There's another approach to this called Tailwind that's actually made by the guys that wrote this book. And is like, it's like the worst abomination that I've seen. Everybody I know who uses it likes it, but like the idea of it makes me physically ill. So this is what Tailwind stuff looks like. It's a similar idea, but instead of, you're not supposed to write any CSS with it. You just write these classes instead, and it ends up doing all that for you. This approach is called utility classes, and I think it's atrocious.
It's gotta like mess with like some of your JavaScript logic too, then, right? Because like if you try to call on something by a class.
Well, like you can also put your own classes on there, but fuck, even just like the fact that they're doing this, that all these are divs. Why are they all divs? We have semantic tags for like this is an address. Like, but yeah, if you don't respect CSS semantics at all, you can do stuff that looks really fucking polished without having to know a whole lot about design.
Yeah, looking at that does kind of make me want to die.
Yes. And like what you can do, if you're handy with CSS, you can combine all of these into like semantically named things. And I don't know. Like I said, everybody I know who uses it loves it. Especially if like you're not so handy with the design kind of stuff. This is like having a very average designer like work on your thing for free, but trade-offs, always trade-offs.
You could just use Squarespace.
Yeah, this is somewhere in between those two things. It's like getting something that has that like polish of Squarespace, but you get the flexibility of writing your own thing. And I will say that like if your app looks like shit, but at least you didn't use Tailwind or Bootstrap, like no one's buying that. It's like, so if you want to do the like, nah, CSS purity thing, you better be able to deliver the goods. So some things to consider.
Where on your GitHub page was all of that design?
That I'll post the link right here. Posted. Other questions about Bootstrap, Tailwind, SCSS. Cool. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you took something out of it. And survey's coming out soon. Bye.
Thank you.